2023 was one of the best years of MMA ever. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. I mean, we were spoiled this year. We had Alexander Volkanovski fight Islam Makhachev not once but twice. I think we all remember the first fight more fondly because that is a fight of the year contender right there. We had Jones make his return to heavyweight and beating Cyril Gane, becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. We got to see the new generation of heavyweights with Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Pavlovich. It's pretty safe to say that this was a banger year, guys. But I want to keep this going. I don't want 2024 to be a dud year, because historically, we'll get a really good year in MMA, then we'll go down a little bit, then we'll go up again. But I want to give you my wish list for 2024. Fights that I want to see, things in MMA that I want to see, just overall a wish list. This will be 10 things, no particular order, kind of. I mean, these are just things that I want to happen. And before I give you mine, please consider a like, a comment, a subscribe, and put in the comment section things that you want to see next year that I didn't put in this video. With that out of the way, let's get started. Number 10 is Strickland defending the belt. Now, I know he's fighting Dricus du Plessis, and that may seem like a cop-out one, but here's the distinction. I want him to win, because, no offense to Dricus, Strickland versus Hamza Chimaev is such a more fun concept than Dricus versus Hamza. Dricus du Plessis, I do like respectful champions, don't get me wrong, but there is something about, the oddity and, the anomaly of Strickland. And I can't be the only one thinking this. Does anyone else believe that if Strickland ever got on a 2-fight losing skid, the UFC is really considering cutting him? And I know people are going to go in the comment section, it's like he's an asset of the company, he has a name, he brings a lot of numbers to UFC cards. So that is all true. And on paper, it's in the UFC's best interest to have Strickland. But 100% the UFC is sweating big time whenever Strickland goes into a press conference. I don't think his press conferences are ever brought up on ESPN. And I know there's some ESPN execs that are working with Disney and up there that are we need to do something about Strickland. But the UFC, best sport in the world, isn't going to put a mouthpiece on Sean Strickland, which I think that would just make it worse, frankly. I cannot wait till he goes to Canada in January. That is going to be quite possibly one of the best press conferences ever. But yeah, my number one thing is I at least want one title defense out of Strickland. I want him to beat Dricus du Plessis. I'm okay with him losing to Hamza. I'm even okay with him... Actually, yeah, I think Hamza is the next person anyways. I know people are going to say Paulo Costa versus Robert Whittaker. Understand that I believe Hamza Chimaev is either going to fight Jared Cannonier for a number 1 contenders match or something else later on the list. But that is my 10. Number 9, Bo Nickel versus a ranked opponent. Listen, I like that we finally have a really good American fighter representative for us. I think that's interesting. I would like to see a grappler that is at the pedigree of a Bo Nickel going into the UFC. And I know people are going to bring up names like Daniel Cormier. Those are once in a while that we'll get somebody that is at that high level. The fact is, at least in the United States and in some other countries, the best grapplers in the world that come from the United States do not compete in MMA. Look at the Gordon Ryans. Look at the Nicky Rods. Those guys are not going into MMA purely because they already make more money than 99% of MMA fighters just grappling. They don't have to risk brain damage. So we'll never get those guys in. Bo Nickel is the next best thing, and I am very interested to see what he can do at middleweight. And I think he does pretty well, because I think middleweight has been a division of strikers, high-level strikers, and this happens every once in a while, where a division will be ran by a certain type of fighter, and it'll be known for that. And then a fighter that is the exact opposite, a kryptonite to those guys, is going to come in the next generation. Bo Nickel, on paper, is the kryptonite to this division. I believe he has better accolades than anybody else in middleweight. I think that's pretty fair to say. I am curious if his grappling is going to be better than anybody else in that division. I think there's some people that will give him a good challenge, but I do believe he beats most people. Now back to the wish list. I want him to fight a ranked opponent. I think Ikram Aliskerov is a fun fight. The one thing I will give to Bo Nickel that I don't know why people don't like give him this courtesy is why, like, let's not throw him up. Like, I don't want him to get the Pereira treatment. I would be okay if he fights Cams all the way up until December, and then we give him a ranked opponent. I keep advocating for Ikram, but I'm okay with anybody that is ranked. I even thought a Paul Craig was a fun fight. Maybe even an Arnold Allen at the end of the year. That'd be kind of fun. But yes, Bo Nickel, ranked opponent by the end of the year. So we can do a formal fraud check, because I'm a little skeptical of Bo Nickel. Next up is Baddy versus Bobby Green. Self-explanatory. I think you do this one in England. The biggest arena in England. You put this on the main card. Leon Edwards, Tom Aspinall, Paddy. Like, that is a great card. I want to see that. I think we'll have to wait until later next year, though, to get all those people on a card. But even if we just have a Leon and Paddy, a Tom Aspinall and Paddy, throw in Arnold Allen after Mavsar, like that's going to be a good England card, and I want to see that. And I think I keep on saying that a fraud check for Paddy, and I know we keep doing that. In my opinion, my hype died for Paddy with the Jared Gordon fight. I gave him a little bit of courtesy going into the Tony Ferguson fight, and at the end of the day, I'm kind of happy he won. But if you take Tony Ferguson to a decision at this point in his career, I really have no clue what to tell you. Bobby Green submitted Tony Ferguson. Paddy Pimblett couldn't submit Tony Ferguson. On paper, Bobby Green was able to do what Paddy couldn't. And this is what Paddy is supposedly good at, is a grappling and jiu-jitsu. And Bobby Green did it better than Paddy did. I think that's the next logical fight you have to make. Or, you can throw him in against Matt Frivola or Drew Dober, but the UFC won't do that because you might lobotomize Paddy. I'm just saying. At least Bobby Green might be, like, his shin compromised, so you might have a closer striking match, but I still believe Bobby Green would get the better. And how funny would it be if we had a Bobby Green versus Grant Dawson part 2, and Paddy just gets flatlined in the first 30 seconds? That would be pretty funny. If Paddy wins, good. Put him up more, throw him more up the rankings. No more cans. Let's see what he can do. My next thing is Merab to lose. Merab Dvalishvili. Understand, I don't like preying on somebody's downfall, but Merab, you frustrate me, dude. And let me go back to why I want Merab to lose. Because people are just going to say, I don't like him. I don't even know why. But Merab, when he fought Jose Aldo, this is what did it for me. I'm not mad that Merab beat Jose Aldo. May the best man win. That's no problem of mine. Merab spoiled Aldo's retirement. You're either a dick, or you are just not good at social interactions, which is also pretty likely. Merab, after the fight, first off, snoozer of a fight, horrible last fight for Jose Aldo. I mean, abysmal. After winning the snooze fest, Jose Aldo whispers into Merab's ear, or says it quietly, there was no microphone, but, same thing. Says, I think this was my last one. Something to that effect. We all knew Jose Aldo was going to retire, but we wanted to hear it from him. So Merab goes on the microphone and spoils Jose Aldo's retirement before he can go to the microphone and say it. Jose Aldo is a legitimate legend. One of the best featherweights to ever live. Bro deserves the right to say that he is going to retire without having Merab say in broken English, in a nasally voice, yes, he's going to retire. Understand that that's one of the reasons I dislike Merab, because you either don't know what social interactions are, or you just wanted to spoil it. I think what he did to Petr Yan was impressive, but at the same time, I don't want a champion that fights like that. You have forced me to root for O'Malley. You have forced me to root for Cejudo over you. That takes a lot. I hope Cejudo wins. At the same time, I feel like it's going to be an egg on my face and people are going to come back to this video saying Merab is champion of the world. What do you say now? And my point still stands. Tell me Merab is going to be a fun champion. No. He just Aljamain would have been a better champion than Merab. Next up is in the same division. I want to see an O'Malley versus Corey Sandhagen. I believe this was like my 7th video I have ever done in content creation. This isn't even on YouTube. This is on TikTok. I started TikTok beginning of this year. Then I moved over to YouTube near the end of the year. Most of you guys know that. But my 7th video I ever did was matchups that I want to see. And one of those was Corey Sandhagen versus O'Malley. I don't care if it's a boring fight or not. I don't care if it's like a technical chess match of a striking. I just want to know who's a better striker. I don't want any grappling in this fight. I don't want any of that. I want to know who is the better striker, O'Malley or Corey Sandhagen, because this has been a thought that I've been pondering ever since O'Malley made his way into the ranked bantamweight. That's what I want to know. Because every single time that I give the point to Corey Sandhagen, I think Corey Sandhagen has better striking IQ. I actually think he has better striking IQ than most people in MMA. But the way that O'Malley moves is just so weird. What I mean by that is I don't think there's anybody at bantamweight, at lightweight, in any of the lighter weight classes that moves like O'Malley does. Even Aljamain. Like, when they ask you the question, is there anything that surprised you after the loss? And most of the time, fighters will never say that because it makes them look unprofessional. 100% you were surprised, you lost. But they'll say, nothing surprised me. He said his movement. He said, this is a guy who has fought Corey Sandhagen and won. He praised O'Malley because the movement he has is just so different than anybody else he's ever fought. I want to see Corey Sandhagen versus O'Malley. I don't care if we have to sacrifice Umar. Umar's young. Umar's going to get a title shot. I don't care. I want Corey Sandhagen, even if he wins by a razor-thin decision. I don't care if he wins by a robbery. I want Corey Sandhagen to get the next title shot over Merab, over Cejudo. I just want to see that fight. Islam with multiple title defenses. That's my next thing. Listen, I know he fought 2 times last year. I want that to be the new thing. In my opinion, you should be contractually obligated as a champion to do 2 fights a year. If you cannot do 2 fights a year by any circumstance, you are either stripped or there's an interim title. That is it. I don't care if we have interims all the time, but there needs to be like a status quo over you have to defend the title 2 times a year, especially at lightweight. Lightweight is so unbelievably stacked right now. It's either the most or second most stacked division in the UFC. We have a lot of people that have to fight for the title. Off the top of my head, we have Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje. You can knock that out in a year easily. We also have Arman Tsarukyan. You also have the rumor that Arman is going to be fighting Charles Oliveira on UFC 300. That's a huge matchup, so that means you only have to fight Justin. And I'm not even going to be picky. We don't even have to do 2 title defenses. I just want 2 fights out of Islam Makhachev. You are the number 1 fighter in the UFC. I was rooting for you to be the number 1 fighter in the UFC after your first win against Alex. Because in my opinion, you deserve it so much more than Jones does right now, because all Jones has been able to do in recent memory, when I mean by recent, I mean since he's been able to come back, is beat a Sorogan, who lost to Francis, isn't even in the top 15 pound-for-pound rankings, and that's what Jones was able to do. Not even ranked. Islam had to fight Charles Oliveira, who's in the top 10 pound-for-pound rankings, and Alexander Volkanovski, who was at that point the best pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC. That's why I was rooting for Islam to be pound-for-pound number 1. And I wished it lit a fire under him that would make him more active. We all know Like, whether we want to say it or not, Islam Makhachev is not going to be fighting for very long. I do not believe that's the case. I would be shocked if we get 4 title defenses out of him, frankly. I think at 35, he's done. I want to get as many fights out of him as possible. I want the UFC to utilize him as much as possible. Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira rematch, Arman Sarukian, somebody else coming up. We can do the fight with Leon Edwards, defend the belt. Like, we have so much to do, but I don't think we're going to be able to get to it unless we, put a quota in place for Islam Makhachev. The Jones retirement. This needs to happen. I put up a post on TikTok saying, who are you guys going to miss the most? Jones was one of the people that I asked when he retires, how many people are going to miss him? Not a lot of people. And that's a honest answer. I'm going to miss John Jones for the reason that we probably won't see a fighter ever do what he was able to do. Outside of that, the UFC does not need Jones. For whatever reason, people have a collective amnesia to the fact that we went 2 years without John Jones, and those 2 years were some of the biggest years for MMA. Like, the UFC is more interesting with Jones, but it's by like a very narrow margin. Jones, end on a win. If you're not going to fight Tom Aspinall, beat Stipe, you're done. No more. You want us to call you the best fighter of all time? Fine. Just leave. Like, I want the heavier weight classes to be more interesting again. Let Tom Aspinall run heavyweight, and then you guys can beef on Twitter for the next 5 years, arguing over, well, in my prime, I would have beat Tom Aspinall. Yeah, but you're not in your prime, and Tom Aspinall is. But I'm rambling on about that. And light heavyweight can finally breathe now that Jones is not dominating that division. I've said this multiple times. One of the worst things that can ever happen to a division is if you have a champion that is super dominant that doesn't have a personality. Jones was slightly better than nothing, but we always had to deal with like crazy shit that he was doing outside of fighting that the UFC to this day has to cover up. Now this, earlier in the earlier in the video, I was talking about like who I want Adesanya to fight. I would be okay with Adesanya fighting Dricus or Adesanya getting a rematch with Strickland later on in the year. However, this is the fight that I want to see in 2024. I want to see Adesanya versus Hamza. I know I've already made a video, Adesanya versus Pereira. I get a feeling that's not going to happen, and we're going to get something else, and that's on the list too, near like the second or first. But I believe they're going to make Adesanya versus Hamza Chimaev. I think that's a fun fight. You could put that UFC 300 because Hamza fights on Ramadan. And I mean, like, one thing that is fair to say, despite what most people think, Hamza and the Dagestani crew really are not related at all. Which people just look at them and are like, oh, they look similar, they must train together. Absolutely not. Zabit didn't even train with, like, the Dagestani crew that you're thinking of. It's a completely different gym. So Hamza can fight during Ramadan. Adesanya is tweeting and hinting at a return at UFC 300. We all think it's Pereira. I thought it was Pereira. But I have a feeling they're just going to do Hamza, number one contenders match. Hamza versus Adesanya, main card of UFC 300, massive fight. Do it. Like, that is an amazing fight. I think Hamza would get it done unless Adesanya negotiates for 5 rounds and makes it through the first 2. If he makes it through the first 2 rounds, he's going to school Hamza, and that is going to be wild. But yeah, Adesanya versus Hamza Chimaev is in top 3 things that I want to see in 2024. We're on the last 2, everybody. Poatan super fight. I want it. You see, I've made a few videos over Poatan versus Adesanya trilogy. We finally fixed that. But if we're not going to get that, Poatan versus Tom Aspinall. I'm seeing a lot of stuff come out that this fight could actually happen. Heavyweight is in a weird spot right now. Tom Aspinall can't fight anybody. Light heavyweight is in a weird spot right now. Pereira can't fight anybody. Tom Aspinall is fairly active. Pereira has been proven to be extremely active. Let's make them fight each other. Why not? Why not? And I know people are going to say, wait a minute, you're okay with Pereira getting 2 belts, but all these other fighters can't. I hear you. And I understand that it's a little bit hypocritical. But at the same time, I don't... Pereira has never been a guy where I've been like, oh yeah, he's going to defend his belt for a lot of times. I honestly think he came into the UFC because he had beef with Adesanya. We should have known from that point that he was not going to have a traditional career. And I don't think Pereira is going to have a long career. I maybe we're going to get 3-4 more fights out of him and then he's done. Pereira isn't that young. I say for his last few fights in the UFC, we do one with Tom Aspinall, UFC 300. One night, UFC 300, you do crazy things. Let's do it. Pereira, Tom Aspinall. That's my second biggest fight of the year that I want to see. We are on number 1. And this one is tied with number 2, but this one makes more sense to me, and it's bigger than people think it is. Number 1 is Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. Why do I want this fight so much? Why is this my biggest anticipated fight of the year? Because you have the silver belt champion of featherweight, somebody who beats everybody at featherweight, but cannot beat Volkanovski. You have Justin Gaethje, who can't for the life of him win a lightweight belt. I know he won the interim against Tony Ferguson, but he lost to Khabib. He lost to Charles. Both were champions. He couldn't win. Why not? We need to do it. In my mind, Masvidal having the BMF belt was pretty stupid. It really was. The fact that he never put it up for grabs, even when he fought Colby Covington, which arguably should have been for a BMF belt, is kind of insane. At least we have Justin Gaethje, who's willing to put it on the line. Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. That sells itself. You could put that anywhere. I have a feeling it's going to be on UFC 300. I know a lot of fights that I'm saying are going to be on UFC 300 because these are the biggest fights of the year. Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway will actually establish a legitimate I'm forgetting the word. Let's just say a lineage of who has had the belt for the BMF. Max Holloway 100% deserves a chance to fight for the BMF title. Justin Gaethje, in my opinion, is the BMF of the UFC. It makes sense. You can justify the matchup. I think Justin Gaethje would get it done purely because I don't think Max Holloway has the power for lightweight, because it's questionable he has the power for featherweight. We're all thinking it. I'm just going to say it. Max Holloway doesn't have the power to KO Justin Gaethje. And Justin Gaethje is strangely technical now. It's like the more he gets hit, the smarter he gets. It's like CTE, but in reverse. So that's the fight I want to see. My number 1 most anticipated matchup of the entire year is Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway, UFC 300 for the BMF belt. 5 rounds. If you think I'm missing anything, things that you want to see in 2024, put it in the comment section below. Please consider a like, comment, subscribe. It really helps me in the algorithm. And you guys have been helping me like crazy. We are now over 2,000 subscribers in just under a month, actually. We've gained around 1,700 subscribers in 1 month. Absolutely insane. You guys give me hope to make videos every single day. And every time I don't feel motivated to make a video, I just remember how much we've gained. And you are the reason we get videos every single day. And with that out of the way, adios, guys.